Okay, good morning. Let's see. Hello, hello. Let me just move my mic over. Okay. Good morning, or hello everyone. Today we're sketching some base bodies, sketching out some ideas for base bodies. So I'm starting a little earlier because I've got to drop out, go get a haircut around 12:30. So I've got to run away before noon. So yeah, we're just in Photoshop. I've got some anatomy reference. I have my head grid, which is very light right now, but we're gonna start with an 8 base head, or an 8 head base. So I just have this drop down. And started this guy here, which is like the most generic. One. Zoom out a bit. going to be repeating the process of sketching out base bodies with different proportions over and over, just exploring different body types and head types, just in terms of like structure and proportion. So here you can see I'm already going for bulkier guy. Four. This doesn't make. One, two, three, four. This guy's gonna be a fridge. Hey, hey. So as I'm sketching these out, I'm exploring just how the head relates to the body, what kind of like the different silhouettes they create, what tapering different things, how it adjusts like the internal shapes of the body, and whether it makes it more of a like slim athletic character or more of a bulky character. But I'm keeping all the landmarks essentially the same. So things like the clavicle, where the Roman arch and rib cage comes, where the iliac crest is, bottom of the crotch, the knees and the ankles, like they kind of fall in the same places on all humans. So they're bony landmarks. And I'm just gonna explore some different body types. I'm starting a new project which I won't spoil too much of. Other new project. But I just want a lot of variety in body types for the cast of characters, just to challenge myself and try some new stuff. You can see maybe if I cap the shoulders even more. Bolder shoulders. Maybe bring these down and bring the forearms up. Kind of gives more of a superhero. Who needs a neck? Try some variations. So this, I think might be a bit wider, but let's see, he's got like a big belly. give it more of like a triangular silhouette. I don't like how it turned in his arms are. It's never too late to ask questions, Roberto. Light and shadow to the elements we're creating. Yes, there are lots of exercises to transfer light and shadow to elements. Well, what do you mean? Like if you have a structure drawing already, just a shade? Head has its own proportion. How do you manage to transfer those proportions to any angle? To the angle you need to adapt in your composition. Okay, I'll answer the second one first. So when you understanding the proportions of something doesn't just mean understanding the proportions from one angle. So like the head here is is a three-dimensional shape. So when you're adjusting the proportions, whether it be like the height difference between like the eyes and the top of the skull, or the eyes and the bottom of the skull, because you might have like here, I just turn symmetry off for a second. You might have some heads that you know, they might have a small kind of cranium shape, and the eyes might be way up here, and you might have, you know, the nose, and I'm just exaggerating this a lot, little ears, right? This might be one head, and then you might have another head that's like very thin, and might have the nose down here and big eyes up here. So these are not just like 2D like measurements and stuff. They apply in all three dimensions. So you need to understand what this head looks like from the side view, you know, how those proportions transfer to different angles. And that's just understanding the fundamental shapes of the head. So even, you know, let's say you have like a long skinny neck, then you need to know like, okay, the neck connects at the bottom of the chin and at the base of the cranium, so you need to extend that out. So they keep their proportions, and then the next level to this is to understand how they change with different angles. So you need to know how to draw simple shapes, like the cranium is a sphere with like a flatter plane on the sides, which is why I often cut off the sides. So whether you draw that sphere in perspective like this, right, then you can transfer that long elongated shape in perspective. Right, so all these shapes are always going to be three-dimensional objects. They're more than just 2D images. And so that's how you transfer proportions to different angles. And it's like regardless of composition. Composition is composition is just how you organize elements in an image. But like, you know, the structure and perspective of objects in your image is independent of the composition, I guess. And then in terms of shading, I have a lot of videos that cover shading steps, whether it be on Patreon or YouTube, so you can just check those out. I think there's one specifically on Patreon called Light and Shadow. If I just go into my Patreon here, we have live streams, workshop streams. So workshop number 2 is shading technique. So you got to scroll quite a bit back to see that. Then workshop 15. So these are these ones. Once you start seeing these thumbnails. So yeah, workshop 2 shading. We have where was 15 here? Lighting, shape design, session character purport, painting anatomy, shading sketches, number 28. So I talk about shading and lighting in all of these, and probably like the same principles because it always applies. So you can check those out just because I'm doing some different stuff today. Okay, let's do a couple. Turn my symmetry back on. So I'll line these up afterward, toward the end of the video. For now, I'll just work on them individually because it's easy to do with symmetry. So we'll do a couple female ones. I mean, they're pretty much the same landmarks, just slightly different proportions. So I might not go like refrigerator width. And if I do want that style of character, then it'll just be like scaled down slightly. Okay, let's see. Where am I going with this? One, two, three, four. So here we'll have a bit of a wider pelvis. So I'm kind of, top of the head is at 8 heads. I like an 8 head figure as like a really, like a really generic figure. If I want something more unique, then I'll drop that or extend that. But I find it's a nice proportion. And then I'm just kind of like marking the width. And kind of like where stuff is supposed to end. So we have like the hands just under the pubis region, and then we have the legs. I'll kind of give them all like a bit of a power stance. So just, it's not really a power stance, but just separating the legs a little bit so that it doesn't look like an anatomy figure like this. It can be kind of a pain in the ass to design pants and stuff when the legs are completely together. Might even like bring the arms out some. And depending on like how feminine or masculine you want your character to feel, there's different things like you can do with the pose, or like what you want to convey. If you want to convey power, then you want to kind of keep more triangular shapes, so, and more like convex shapes like this, right? You know, it's like the power stance. And if you want to convey like weakness or innocence or something like that, then you can go with more concave shapes. So you can see what just those lines do to the um, to the feeling of the pose. It's pretty drastic. So you'll see maybe like I'm kind of trying to think of like a character archetype that I was looking up recently was the girl from Star. Wait, what's this new game with the Blade something or Star? I can't believe I'm blanking on this. Stellar Blade. Stellar Blade. So the protagonist from Stellar Blade has pretty concave forms to her, like very soft forms, but when she's walking and stuff and running, she kind of have this like these kind this is super exaggerated, but these kinds of shapes versus a character like 2B or something from Nier that has a much more powerful stance. Okay, let me just get back to what I was doing with this. This guy has long arms. Not a huge fan. Okay, how do I show which muscles I want to exaggerate or show? Okay, something I think about, especially when drawing dynamic characters, and this might answer your question on all fronts, or hopefully. This is something a lot of like classical sculptors and illustrators think about, but it's active versus passive sides of the body. For example, when your arm is bent, I'll do like a side view of the arm here. So when your arm is bent here, and let's say you're flexing. So I'll just keep these kind of neutral for now. So your active side is going to be every muscle group has has two sides that oppose each other. For example, you have the bicep that flexes, and then you have the tricep that extends. Like you have an extensor group and you have a flexor group. Same in your forearm, and even on your like torso. Like you have back muscles and you have your pectoralis and your rectus abdominis in the front that they oppose each other, and that allows your body to stabilize itself. But also in a dynamic pose, right, we're talking about imbalance in those muscle groups. So you'll always have an active side and a passive side. So if, for example, in the arm, you'll have, in this pose here, your active side will be the bicep, right, and the front delt. So these will be more exaggerated. And then the tricep and the back side of these are going to be more relaxed, right? So when you're flexing your arm, you might still feel like, if you flex your whole arm, just like this in a pose, then you'll feel a lot of the muscles activate. But let's say you were curling something, then your tricep is going to be stabilizing, but it's not going to be as active or as activated as your bicep, or else you wouldn't be able to curl. You would just have a straight arm. So even though you might have, the tricep visible here, right, it's not like bulging out. So here, I'll do kind of both examples. So you'll have, this will be more exaggerated. You're basically the flexors in your forearms and stuff. And then these will be more relaxed on this side, right? Then you have some other muscles in here. But just in terms of silhouette, you can see you have an active side and a passive side. And then if you were to do the opposite, right? So let me just draw the arm straight down. Right, so here you have your delt, same muscle groups, right? Let's have it pronated, I guess. So here, let's say you're flexing, you can't really extend your arm past straight, but let's say you're flexing back, then you'll have your passive side will be on the front, on the bicep, right? So maybe this is more chill here, and then I can kind of exaggerate this back, right? And then all these muscles in the back, you can kind of exaggerate them more. So you'll have your flexor group here, and then here your tricep, which kind of leading in, you can kind of exaggerate this, right? So pulling in. Right, you'll have the rear delt coming over. You can kind of exaggerate that tricep popping out. Right, so here we have our active side is on this side instead of on the bicep side. So that's just like for an arm. But if we take a torso, for example, I'm going on a huge tangent here. Let's say we have a torso that's kind of like, here we'll have like the rib cage facing here, and then we'll have the pelvis kind of in this sort of position, right? So we'll have like our arms kind of feeding in. So if this is like our generic torso, right, the active side is going to be on this side and the passive side is on this side. So on this side, like if we lay in our muscles, right, we'll have our pecs kind of coming into the sternum, and then we'll have the abdominal wall here, and then we'll have the obliques and serratus muscles and the lats and stuff. I don't need to draw them in like super dark, but if I just exaggerate the ones on this side and I leave the ones on this side kind of like, I leave them alone a little bit, then you can kind of create the impression that, there's going to be pinching and stuff here too, but you can create the impression that they're flexing on one side, right? And not on the other, so even just something like that, you know, you're exaggerating a little bit more here to show the compression in the body, and that'll, you know, translate to the rest of the figure. So you kind of always look for, I mean, the long-winded way of saying, always look for an active and passive side in your posing to know which muscles you want to accentuate. I'll keep this up there. For a neutral pose like this, though, I'm not really accentuating anything, though. I'm just looking for overall proportions. Kind of just playing with like what different angles look like. People have all sorts of different shapes. You know, if you have a forward tilt in your pelvis or a kind of a neutral tilt, can have different silhouettes. If you have like powerful thighs versus less powerful. Bring the arms in a bit. I never now I like okay, so it depends where you are in your knowledge of anatomy and how much you need as a guide. So I'd say if you're still learning anatomy, if you're not like 100% comfortable with it, even once you are 100% comfortable with it, I'd still do this for a year or so to get like really comfortable with it. But you can draw all the muscle groups as in your sketch to know to lay them out to have a good like base structure. This is something that like Dave Finch talks about. He's like a Marvel comic artist, but when like in his early days of drawing superheroes and stuff, he'd always sketch in all the muscles just so that like you really anchor it down in your system. Once you know like once you know where they are, you just need to indicate them. But that comes like that comes years down the line, like once you're really really comfortable with anatomy. So like here I'm doing just like a lot of indication. But I know that like here you have your sternocleidomastoid that like anchors into the clavicle, and then there's a little split with the tendon, and then you have your traps that are overlapping and they connect at the the acromion process, blah blah blah. Like I don't need to draw everything because I kind of know where it is, but I'll still indicate, like draw the beginning of the clavicle and then draw the end here where the shoulder and the traps kind of connect. And then I know that like the delts connect around halfway down the clavicle out to like around the what's the name of the bone in the upper arm, but don't need to know the names, you just need to know what the shapes are and what groups are there. And then you have the pec that kind of wraps around into the center of the torso, but that's all anchored by the rib cage. So this is going to be a skinnier character. So 1, 2, 3. Kind of a heart shape here. All these characters are going to be like pretty fit. They're all supposed to be athletes, so there are different kinds of fit. They're all competing for something. your proportions a bit. Sometimes you just have to zoom out and reevaluate. Oh yeah, we're working in symmetry, so it doesn't really change anything. I'm also getting kind of stuck in the details. Niche question, but how do you deal with contour lines for your black and white drawings when you are masking them? What do you mean by deal? Okay, so okay. Okay, here I can kind of show you. So my contour lines have sort of fuzzy edge, right? So what you can do when you're masking, you can feather your selection. So I'll turn it on maybe like to 2 under here, and then I'll just focus on this area. And then when I go around and mask like here, I kind of try to chop my line in half. I'll just do this section, and I'll fill it, not with a gradient, like this. And you can see that the edge is kind of still fuzzy and around it, but my selection isn't super hard, right? It's got a little bit of a feather to it, so that when I clip it, it kind of cleans things up. I think that's the best way I've learned to deal with that, or else you get like, let's say I turn this down to 0 contiguous, no anti-alias. Let's say I had this as a selection, right? That has a super hard edge that's kind of pixelated. It kind of looks weird when I clip it, like it chops it off a little bit prematurely. Okay, let's do, so 1. These are kind of similar body types, but one's a little bit more stocky and the other one's a little bit taller and thinner. What were some of the ones here? If I wanted to make one that's even shorter and stockier, I could just like take this one, take all of these proportions and mash them down to like this height. So overall the body kind of keeps. Am I still in the center? Oh no, I'm not. Okay, there. Yeah, overall the body kind of keeps the same proportions. Or I could like lower the pelvis down and kind of have shorter legs. Some shorter people have an easier time building thick muscles because they don't have as much length in their limbs. So I could make it really stocky. This jacked. Powerful legs. And then her head's floating up in the air right now, but I could even make her head a little bit. Thicker. Here, I'll just make it flush with the line. So this is also like a very valid body type, you know. You have, we've all seen these people. This would be someone who's like 5 foot nothing, and this one would be someone who's like 6'3". I've seen a couple 6'3" girls in my life, and it's nice to look at them eye to eye. Here we are, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so here we have a couple. Let's do one who's really quite stocky. kind of a more rectangular head. This one's gonna be like one of those power lifter. So yeah, I use like a similar approach to what I do for like any male character. I'll just try to find where, like this guy, right? It'll be kind of like similar body type to this. Actually, I can even take this one and kind of like scale it down slightly. Wait, did I do this wrong? Wait, let me do this again. So let me bring that down to here. I'll start with this as like a base. And just to show what I would change to make it still feel feminine. So one thing is I'd get rid of this package. I'd probably lift the pelvis a bit to extend the legs slightly and probably make it wider. And then I would narrow the rib cage down. I'll take some of the squareness off the limbs. And kind of narrow the rib cage, so instead of having like a wide square one, I'm kind of leaning more towards this shape. And then obviously I would give her some breasts that lay over the pecs. It's a thick neck. Could even give her some thicker, like slightly rounder quads. like similar archetype. Slightly different physiology. They look like they could arm wrestle though. Okay, how many am I at now? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 6 of each. Or 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Unless I can't count. 1, 7. Okay. I think I have 4 females, 2 males. Convert to smart object. Convert to smart object. I'm just going to create a quick lineup because I've got to go now. Let's keep these as backup. Let's make them half size. We'll have our main dude here. Big guy. Her, then her, then her, then her. So now the nice thing about like having this, if I just like duplicate this to just make this a bit more visible. So my goal with this is to kind of look at, I have some character descriptions and some groups that I want to create, and I can kind of like match some body types to some archetypes. So let's say I want like, I don't know, these 2 Rambo guys, like, you know, like these 2 military like special forces kind of like guys. I might pick like these 2, you know. Wait, let me turn my symmetry off. Like these 2, right? So you have a kind of a tank guy, and then you've got a fit guy, and or maybe I might choose like, you know, this one here and like these 2, you know, so that they're they kind of give off that like more aggressive, powerful look. Or if I wanted I don't know, like an old master and his apprentice, you know, then I might choose like maybe like this person and the apprentice, or maybe maybe I can even choose like something like that like a stockier or less imposing character as like the old master that has just like mastered their technique, and then the apprentice is like a big chunky guy that is a little dumber maybe, but has the power to kind of like back up their whatever their abilities or stuff. So I want to do quite a few more of these, maybe like double the amount, and really play with like height and width and muscle versus like, you know, how big they are or how lean they are. And so I have like a good spread of different different ideas and different body types that I can start to build on, and then I can look at portraits and other stuff, costume. How do you draw heads at difficult angle? Let's say head is looking up and seen from the bottom jaw. Ooh, okay. So I don't really have time to answer any more questions, but you can check videos. In my last stream, I actually talked about this, about drawing. Like I demoed some, but the key is just to learn the 3D, the three-dimensional structure, and learning to orbit it in space. Okay, so that's gonna be it for today's stream. I've just gotta leave early, go get my hair chopped, because it's going crazy. But thanks for hanging out. We got quite a few figures drawn today, and we will see you next week. Ciao, everyone.